How would you like to hear how I went from being an addict to being a super successful multi-millionaire listing agent? I mean, it's pretty crazy what I've experienced through my life, and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about from addict to abundance. My name is Chris Stafford, 30 plus year listing agent in San Francisco. And one of the things that happened to me is when had a crazy childhood. Years of therapy have corrected a lot of thinking. But during my teenage years, especially, as I recall, from the age of about 13 on, from 13 years old on, I started smoking cigarettes, I started drinking, I started doing mescaline, I started doing THC, smoking pot. I mean, basically, my whole teenage years were a blur because I was not one of the cool kids. I was really not that good looking and really, I grew up tall really fast. So I was really, what's the word, very awkward, I guess you could say. And one of the ways that I sort of dealt with my feelings, if you will, as a teenager is I was just basically high the entire time. Some of the stuff, 13 years old, and we're doing mescaline and THC pills, smoking pot. One experience, I can't believe it or not, I actually had a bag of pot in my bedroom, and my father found it and got so mad at me, but he was actually quite cool about it, but not really. So it was just, and this really continued into my college years. So I went to, obviously I didn't have a lot of ambition. I was a total mediocre student at best. I barely got C's through junior high school and high school. And went into community college because I didn't have anything else to do and I didn't have any money. My parents didn't have any money to send me to a good university. So I spent 2 years at a community college, pretty much just sort of like getting by. And the one class that I really excelled in was accounting. Believe it or not, it just came naturally. As boring as it is, it came naturally to me. And so, yes, I took accounting classes. But the thing that changed, there's so many pivots in my life, so many significant events that happened in my life that really just changed the course of my life. And one of them happened in my second year of college. And I'll never forget it because my best friend Bruce and I went to California. We just decided that we're going to go out to California. I heard so many great things about California. And so that trip totally changed my life. As a matter of fact, we flew to San Diego and then we rented a car and we drove to LA and San Francisco over a course of 3-week period. And I'll never forget the car because if I'm not mistaken, it was a 1977 brand new Thunderbird, navy blue with a tan interior. I'll never forget that. And we thought that we were just hot shit. We thought we just were so cool. And we stayed in basically budget motels. And I actually had a friend of mine who was a girl who I sort of dated that moved to Los Angeles. And we hung out with her for a little bit. But then went up to San Francisco and we were partying and drinking and doing drugs, the whole 9 yards. But the thing that blew me away, seriously, was just how California, coming from dismal, dreary, dark Detroit, and to go into the state of California and see the sunshine, to see the beautiful people, the beautiful cars, the beautiful houses. I was absolutely blown away. I was so naive. I didn't know any of this existed. And it just totally blew me away. And I'll never forget it because this is the thing that changed my life the most. And that was, I'll never forget this. On the plane ride back to Detroit, returning home, I made a decision that there were more things out there in this world that I wanted to take part in, that I really wanted to be a part of. And I knew, I had the inkling then that I really wanted to help other people. I had this premonition that I really wanted to help other people. And for me to do that, I really needed to get my game together. I needed to step up my game. And so I literally, and this is the honest to God's truth, I literally got home from that trip. I think I may have been at the end of my second year at community college. Quit that school. I found, I don't even know how, I worked my tail off and got a bunch of jobs, and I paid for a private university that specialized in accounting, Walsh College in Troy, Michigan. And because I knew that was the one thing that I knew that I was good at. And, really, I said I got to fix myself. So I literally enrolled in a private university. I quit drugs. I quit drinking. I quit hanging around with all these friends that I had that were really no good for me. And I went through the last 2 years of college, and I graduated from Walsh College summa cum laude. Do you believe that? I mean, here was this stoner teenage kid graduating summa cum laude from a private university, and I was so proud of myself because then PricewaterhouseCoopers, which used to be called Coopers & Lybrand, they basically hired me. I went on a job interview, and I'll never forget it because I started working with PricewaterhouseCoopers. That must have been in 1982 because I worked there in the Detroit office for 2 years. I got a salary when I first started of $18,000 a year. And I thought I died gone to heaven. And I wore suits, and I had this fancy office in downtown Detroit, and it was just an amazing experience. But I kept thinking to myself, somehow, in some way, I need to make myself as strong as possible. You've heard the old adage, put on your air mask first in an airplane. I needed to make myself as strong as possible. And so I did. I concentrated on my health. I concentrated on my job. And lo and behold, I subconsciously told myself I wanted to go back to California. And it took me 2 years. I had to take my CPA exam, and I passed my CPA exam the very first time, which was sort of hard to do. That was a whole experience. And I think within a couple months after that, I got a job transfer to the Coopers & Lybrand, or PricewaterhouseCoopers San Diego office. And I'll never forget because I left Detroit February 14th, Valentine's Day, 1984. I'll never forget that day, and I won't forget the Toyota Corolla that I drove from Detroit to California, and it was probably below zero with snowing, and wouldn't believe it. On the outskirts of Detroit, I wasn't on the road more than an hour, the exhaust system on my Toyota Corolla fell off. And all I remember was I was so determined to get to California. I remember reaching underneath the car and taking the exhaust system and wedging it into the bottom of the car because I wasn't going to stop. And I never did stop. And I never have stopped. I got to California in February of 1984 after leaving that below zero temperature. It was like in the 70s in San Diego. It was sunny. It was an amazing experience. I thought that I manifested this most amazing part of my life. And I worked in that office in PricewaterhouseCoopers in San Diego for a number of years. They transferred me to New York. And then I lived in New York in 34th and 1st in Manhattan. I worked in the national office for PricewaterhouseCoopers. That was a 2-year stint. I went back to San Diego, and it was there shortly after I moved back to San Diego that I decided that San Diego, after coming from New York, was just too provincial. And then I decided an opportunity came up for me to head up the high technology group in San Francisco. And so they transferred me to San Francisco, and I worked there for a couple of years. And I just met some incredible people there. But then I just realized that as good as I was in accounting, and I made a ton of money in accounting over the years, I hated it. I just hated my job. And that's when my real estate agent, who helped me buy my first place in San Francisco, who became a really good friend of mine, said, go into real estate. And so that is how I made the transition from being an addict to living my best dream, because I was passionate about real estate. And I went into real estate after saving up enough money for 6 months and had the time of my life. I just dove into real estate like nobody's business. And I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, that was in 91 or 92. So I'm still selling real estate as a listing agent in San Francisco since then. So for over 30 years. And that's how I did it. That's how I got into real estate. Now, this is part one. I want to talk to you about how I manifested other things in my life and how the life events have just changed the course of my life. But in this video, I just wanted to say that I had the inkling at a very early age that my life was about helping and serving other people. And I knew to do that, I needed to be as strong as possible, as strong as I could be, so that I could put on my air mask first and help others.